So obviously the rental market is very tight these days. What are potential renters looking for?
Yeah, I think there's renters looking for, different things depending on income levels, the cities that they're looking in. But I think for all renters, there's a common theme that they're all looking for affordability. They're looking for choice. I think it's a very competitive market. So, price is always a concern, but, getting access to housing is also a concern, I think, across all levels of renters. There's simply not enough choice, and I think that leads people to ending up in the spot where they can just get in, or we're seeing cases where rents are being bid up in certain places. So affordability, I think that's a common theme. No matter if you're looking at a studio or a 3-bedroom for the family, everybody wants affordability. I think they also want choice and location and the ability to get in somewhere without having to compete with 12 other people and see those rents get bid up. So, yeah.
How do you make the rental market, and this is a very tough question that a lot of people want to know, how do we make the rental market more affordable?
I think we need more supply just everywhere. I think what we're seeing is the municipalities that are being successful at delivering housing, we're seeing residents move in there. I mean, we saw this in Calgary. Calgary built a lot of housing. We saw an influx of people to that market. There's certain pockets where I work in BC where there's been municipalities that are successful at delivering new housing, and we're seeing residents move in and those municipalities grow. So, the new supply, it's not at the point where it's going to be bringing rents down at this point. We're seeing all the new housing go up. It's all at the top tier of rents. I mean, for a project to work, the rents need to be at the peak to justify the project economics. But what we need is housing to be spread out. We need it in all municipalities. We need it across the country so that people can find options to rent where they're currently living, and that they don't need to move across the country to a place like Calgary, where we've seen that over the last 12 months of just a huge influx.
You mentioned new supply coming onto the market and obviously much higher rents than the rents that are in the older stock. Is there a preference, or are we seeing demand across the board for older versus newer product with the higher rents?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of demand for the older product. If it's clean with good landlords, and there's a lot of appetite for that. The renter market, I mean, with what's happened with interest rates, there's so many people that were forced to stay into the rental market. People that I think would have been buyers in the last 12 months had interest rates stayed where they were, which is historical lows. And so, the byproduct of that was a lot of people that were going to buy, they stayed as renters. And those are the people that we're seeing are in the luxury units, the 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms with much higher rents. But there's a huge segment of the population that are single people or entry-level workers that just need a clean, smaller space to live. And so even for those new buildings, we've seen a lot of demand for studios. There's a big gap right now in the rent per square foot on a studio versus the 2 and 3 bedrooms. There's just a lot more people that are okay to be in a smaller space, and so we're seeing those rents per square foot quite a bit higher. As for the new and old, we continue to see the old product. The rents on those continue to climb. Obviously, there's a premium for the new product, definitely, but it used to be that landlords had to do full renovations to kind of really move up those rents. But what we're seeing now is with a coat of paint and a clean unit, there's a lot of demand for that older housing supply just based on the relative affordability for those types of properties.
So this tells me with just how tight the rental market is that a renter, if they land a potential unit and they're there, is there any incentive for them to ever leave, or what happens there?
Not in any of our provinces with rent control. I think, speaking with people that have been in rental units, it's a common thing that, how long have you been in your place? 10 years. Why don't you want to move? Rent control. People get it, and people see the value in that. And, obviously it's helped people kind of at the individual economic level. I don't think it's helping with the supply and the incentive. I mean, you look at a place like Alberta without rent control and just how much housing has been built there. Obviously rents are increasing in Calgary too because there's so many people moving there. And I guess it kind of speaks to build it and they will come. So rent control, I think it's a double-edged sword. It helps people at the individual level, but it's not the incentive that I think a lot of developers are looking for to be encouraged to build new housing. So
Totally agree. Just given the amount of demand that's out there, and we hear projections of population growth that are very strong for Canada, especially for the big markets like Toronto and Vancouver and even Calgary. Do you ever see a situation where the rental market will become more balanced? Will supply come on eventually?
I think, with the rental market, there was a lot of projects that honestly stalled over the last 12 months with some of the economics that have happened. And so, I'm looking ahead at two things that, if interest rates come back down, there's probably a lot of people in those higher end 2 to 3 bedroom luxury type units that are probably going to become homeowners. And so that should open up some rental supply. I mean, that's going to affect other areas of real estate like the homeownership market. And so, there could be some softness in the more luxury type rents if those people can go and buy homes like I think a lot of people were planning to. With the supply, with those projects that were put on hold, and a lot of developers that I work with just looked at interest rates, and rents going up has helped with some of that. But I think with the slowdown that we saw in some of the starts, that it's going to be tough for the next couple of years to get that new supply in. And there's a lot of immigration, which I think is a great thing for Canada. We need those skilled workers, and we need those people coming here. I think it's one of the greatest attributes for Canada, but it's also a problem for housing. So we need the workers to get the buildings built and support the economy, but it's a tough situation, I think, that we're in right now.
So I guess what we're saying is we don't see a light at the end of the tunnel for the rental market. It's going to be a tight one for the next several years.
Yeah, especially for projects that are being built with affordability. We talk so much about rent per square foot, but the face rent on a unit, I think, is what ultimately matters to a lot of people. And for a product that's being built with $1,600 a unit, $1,600 to $1,800. I mean, that's a big rent for a lot of people, but there's a lot of new supply that's well above that. And so to get access to housing where it's affordable for a single person, for somebody on a single income to be in that, that's going to be a big thing. And I think a lot of the units where you're pairing up with a roommate, like that's where I started. That was my first place.
Yep.
I've gone through that housing journey. I'm walking buildings all the time and just seeing kind of what these buildings are like and who's occupying them. I think there's just going to be a lot of demand for face rents that are livable and people can afford those. So I do worry a little bit about the softness of the high-end luxury large units, because I can't imagine people are going to want to be in those forever. They're going to want to transition to being homeowners when the interest rates come back down. So.
Right. The high end, to your point, I think there's going to be some opening up in there, but at the same time, the weird thing is, as a developer, given what the cost to build, the only thing that makes economic sense is to build high end. So
yeah, and I think there's a lot of frustration with, why don't developers just build more affordable housing? But the fact of the matter is these projects have costs that have been rising. The interest rates have been
100%.
going up. Everything is working against rental housing right now.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody that's going to look at that piece of land and think of what is the maximum that I can get out of it. And, that's how the land is going to trade. And, somebody going in and looking at, I want to build all affordable units, they're not going to be the one that's going to buy the site at the end of the day, because somebody will pay a little bit more.
Right.
And so it's always going to come down to those project economics, highest and best use. And right now, it's always targeting those really high rents per square foot. I think municipalities have done pretty good jobs in some cases of coming up with kind of affordable housing agreements that work and kind of level the playing field for certain markets. I think there's other areas where it's been too restrictive.
Yes, exactly.
But we're seeing it work for some places. North Vancouver, where I live, has done a wonderful job at contributing new housing. And they have a pretty workable, median renter income program that has been contributing that. But it's not so restrictive that things aren't getting built. So
Right. It raised an interesting point that we didn't talk about, but highest and best use these days, highest and best use may not be office as much anymore. That's certainly been the case in Calgary, and we've seen some conversions of office buildings to residential. Do you think that could potentially be a trend where we have excess capacity in the office market but not enough supply in the residential market. Is this something that could happen in Vancouver and Toronto as well?
In Vancouver and Toronto, it's tough to say. Definitely in Calgary, we've seen that. I mean, it takes an experienced owner and operator to transition an asset like that. I mean, it's almost easier to build because it's all fresh, but working an old structure into something else, we've seen success with that. And I think part of the reason there's success for that in a market like Calgary is because there is a lot of, things that the city is providing to help those projects.
Right.
And so, I think when you're looking at asset transition, a lot of that's going to start with the municipalities and what kind of benefits that they're providing to make those economics work.
Right.
Because you're effectively trying to, it's the square in the box kind of thing.
Exactly.
They're different things, but, when a municipality comes in and they see that office building empty and not generating revenues, it can make a lot of sense for that municipality to put in money or rebates or incentives for developers to come in and solve some of our residential rental housing issues and also, change that use. But
Right.
I think that takes cooperation between the development industry and the municipality to make it work.